Hi, class is in session. It's time for shoperations at accounting. Hi, class is in session. It's time for shoperations at accounting. Hi, kids. Hybrid teams, for Pete's sake. I'm trying to manage through screens, but I can't figure out which Zoom window's my next meeting. Well, since 2012, my firm's been in the cloud. Join us as we go deep. I'll try not to run it to the ground. We're sharing profit and loss and managing back office. The tax staff just quit. Tried to hire on LinkedIn, no luck. And scope creep, team count, CAS. Automate tax, compliance, transactions, ID, and bottlenecks. Come on, ops. Scotty, wait a minute. It's my firm, dog. I know, and I said you could run it however you want.
Introducing the star of our show,
Scotty and Dustin Verity.
We're gonna have a problem here.
Oh, students, you're in for a treat. We have our guest is coming to me live from Hawaii, straight out of Hawaii. We got Dustin Verity. Dustin, you were blessed with a good name for a CPA to use, especially in the mid 2010s, around the time you started your firm. Verity CPA sounds made up. It sounds like a name that you just made up.
Hey, well, first of all, hey, aloha. Thanks. Yeah, no, I was lucky. No, when I founded the firm back in 2012, I had originally named it Verity Accountancy Corporation, like this super long thing.
Now, you alluded it, you started in 2012, and we'll get to your whole start here. I just wanted to jump out with the name here because we're introducing you to our students. Verity CPAs, you go anywhere and somebody's got their last name on their firm. You were just blessed with a good name, especially for this tech era. You got Acuity and you got Verity. Mm-hmm. Those both sound made up. Which one's real, right?
Right. Just fortunate.
For our students here, we've got Dustin. Dustin and I met fairly recently over in Santa Rosa, California, Bot Keepers Conference. And Dustin came up to me. He said, you've been listening to the show and you introduced yourself with your wife. And then our wives met. We enjoyed dinner together that same night. And I learned a lot about your practice. But why don't you let our students in on that story? So how did you end up into this spot? You have a firm. Give us some context too, at least lay of the land. Tell us the size of the firm. You are located in Honolulu, Hawaii. And then roughly how many employees you have.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I was with Grant Thornton here in Honolulu, and there was a change in CEOs. Back 2010-ish, and the new CEO wanted to close all the small market offices, and so they closed the Honolulu office. I stuck around with Successor Firm for 2.5 years, and then just felt like it was time to go out and do something on my own. There was a lot going on internally and at the firm I was with, and it just felt like a good time. So in February 2012, I started my own practice, working out of then my girlfriend's kitchen table. Our revenues that first year was like 100,000, right? And that's 2012. And now we're going to hit about 3.6, and we have 25 full-time equivalents, 3 offices on 2 islands, and it's a full-service firm at this point. When we started off, it was just like assurance services.
You ended up in Hawaii because of Grant Thornton? Did they move you there? Was there a position open there that you volunteered for?
Oh, yeah. Okay. You want to go way back. Okay.
I got to hear about this.
Okay.
This sounds like the dream life here.
All right. Grew up in Northeast Texas, small rural area, graduating class of 70, and I just couldn't wait to get out of the small town. You know how it is when you're 17 years old and your hormones are raging and you're just ready to go, right? You're just ready to go out, explore.
You're small town Texas boy.
Right. So joined the Marine Corps straight out of high school. And then, off I went. My last duty station was at Marine Corps Air Station El Toro in Orange County, Southern California, before they closed it down. Instead of going back to my home of record, which would have been back to Texas, I elected to stay locally, finished up my undergrad at Chapman University there in Orange County, and then was recruited by Grant Thornton and their Orange County office straight out of Chapman University. So did that for about 4 years, and I just got burnout. We all know how it is working at a big firm and Was always on the road, LA, Vegas. I think my last year there was on the road something like around 300 days out of the year.
300 days out of the year, you
Yeah,
were
and I was
on
just
site on audits. And
yeah,
yeah.
just traveling. I would come back thinking I had like some break.
But you were
because
a
of
military boy, so you already were used to all that travel anyway, right?
Right. But then I also had, a new family at the time, right? So I had a young wife and a 1-year-old and, on an associate salary, it's kind of hard to find it. So she was having to work and we're having to juggle babysitting our son and so forth, or watching our son. So it's a little bit, and when you're doing 80, 100-hour weeks too, it's, I'd bring my son to the office. He would hang out till 2 a.m. on Saturday morning with me and so forth. It gets to be a strain. So it was a friend of a friend. She was actually working at EY as a tax manager, but she was from Hawaii, and the position opened up with Forest City Enterprises, or Forest City Hawaii, in Honolulu. Forest City Enterprises had entered into a PPV with the Department of the Navy to renovate, restore, develop family housing for the military. And they were having a hard time recruiting for someone locally. She knew me from Southern California, did some interviews, flew to Cleveland, flew to Hawaii, and got the job offer. They paid for the move, and that's what brought me to Hawaii in 2004.
You have not looked back to your town in Texas ever since you left. I guess, you go back, you got family there, I'm sure.
Right.
But
yeah.
this is now, you've definitely been there long enough to establish roots in a volcano. It's a beautiful place that you're living in now. And you've created that around the ability to do that as an accountant. And then you started your own practice. Now, you mentioned slightly your first year you did 100,000. How did you get your first clients? You started a firm in Hawaii. You guys are doing audit and assurance too, as you had done before, but you're also doing taxes and CAS for our students. So we're going to talk about all those things that you're doing at your firm, but how did you get to that first 100,000, let alone to almost 4 million that you're at now?
Right. So back then there was a lot of, energy tax credits were coming along. I think like 1603 and some of the other tax credit work, and they needed like agreed upon procedures and examinations and so forth to qualify for some of those rebate programs. And I had an in with a buddy of mine who had a tax practice, and he did a lot in the energy tax credit space, but he was an attorney and not a CPA at the time. And so he couldn't perform any of the additional like agreed upon procedures or examinations that he needed in order to submit to the government to help these companies get their energy tax rebates and so forth. So it kind of formed a referral. He was a strong referral source, and he and I worked together for quite some time doing energy tax credits. And then the clients that I had at Grant Thornton, they had smaller projects, right? They may have a small LLC that the bank needs an audit for, and they can't afford a big firm, but they can afford my fees as I had very little overhead at the time. And so it was kind of all of those things. I did a lot of networking, being a street. A lot of folks already knew me from like the alumni associations here on the island and FEI, and building up the referral networks. And
so it sounded like you had a niche going into it, and this wasn't accidental. So were these credits around, were you working on them at Grant Thornton too?
No, not at all.
No.
No.
Okay.
It was, but I was approached, towards the, when I was kind of weighing the decision to leave or not. My buddy at the time, he was like, oh yeah, no, I can feed you a steady stream of work to help get you going. The tax credit work isn't going to last forever, but it'll get you going until you get some momentum and so forth. And so that was a big help.
So talk about getting from that first 100,000 to the first million, because that's a big hurdle. As I've seen on your site, you have a management team that's basically running the show for you. You don't even have to take new client calls because new clients are fed directly to the team they'll be working with. Took you a little while to get there, like a little over 10 years, but I want to hear part of that journey though. Like you were probably doing everything in that first 100 to 1 million.
Oh yeah. No, the first million was painful. That was the worst. But you're right. I started some folks that I worked with at Grant Thornton, which had pulled out of the market, by now. They came on working with me part-time initially, and then later I was able to bring another one in. They're both Alicia and Paula are partners now at the firm, and they were the first two to come on. I was doing all the sales, I was reviewing all the work, I was HR, I was IT, I was any contract that came along. I had to deal with all the vendors, all the CCHs and Thomson Reuters and everybody else. And yeah, it was, definitely, I can remember years where we're an S Corp, so I would be the lowest paid employee on
As
payroll.
you're building.
Yeah, as we're building. And there were several years where everybody was making a significant amount more than I just, because I kept reinvesting in the firm, kept trying to grow it, eventually moved off the dining room table and sublet a small office space with my buddy that had the tax practice. And then, of course, then started adding some interns, started adding some admin folks. And then we got too big. So I was like, okay, penciled out the numbers for our weekend.
What was too big?
Well, it was just a space issue. We've always had a physical office. Yeah, I just went from dining room table back into town. But it was just a space issue, a physical space issue. We entered into our own lease, put on our big boy pants. And then we had our own office lease. And it was funny because we were all joking about how we could go bowling. There was so much empty space in the office at the time when we first moved in. But within a year and a half, 2 years, the place was packed again. And I find that to be the trend. Like, we just moved into some new office space last summer, and it's already packed again. Like, we're running out of room again. I know we do have virtual employees, and we do have kind of a hybrid schedule with our employees, but a lot of them enjoy coming into the office and enjoy the social aspect of it. They'll go out around 10 a.m. in the morning, they'll all go get coffee together, and then they'll all go out to lunch and have lunch together. They even get together on Thursday nights most weeks. They just all go out and have dinner and drinks together as well. I mean, they really do like the social aspect of being in a group and being around other people versus just completely working remotely.
Right. Yeah, you have that camaraderie. And I'm sure they don't mind getting out of their house and making the commute living in Hawaii, right? I mean, it's probably not that bad to go out and go to a place, anywhere that you guys are on the island. So that probably lends itself to making this a little bit easier. I don't know, I guess I don't really want to get into how it was during COVID, but were you still going into your office, or did you have everybody stay at home during that time?
That was a tricky time because there was so much information out there. It was the zombie apocalypse. We were all going to die, right?
But you were safe. You were on the island.
Yeah. Well, it spread here too. It found us. So initially, they came out, the mayor of the city and county of Honolulu came out with an order it was like a Sunday afternoon. I can kind of remember there was a big press release. And basically just said, unless you're an essential business, everything is shut down. And we just happened to lock out. Professional services was one of what was considered essential business. And so we could continue to go into the office. And we did that maybe about the end of the first week of April. So we kept coming in for a couple weeks, but you could feel it. Like, everybody was just so on edge in the office. Everybody was so just fearful of what was going to happen, or fearful of catching something in the office and taking it back home to their family. And, you could just feel it. Like, there was too much tension in the air. And so we did go remote for the rest of April and all of May. But what we found was, like a lot of businesses, everybody's utilization went up and all the project realization went down. So a lot of work was getting booked as being done, but there wasn't a lot of work to show for it that actually did get done. So we ended up coming up with a kind of a port and starboard in the office. Alice and I, we went in, spaced everything out, put blue tape on the floor, like we're 6 feet from the desk, we're 6 feet from the fridge, put plexiglass up on all the desks. And then we had half the office in on Monday, Tuesday, the other half then on Wednesday, Thursdays, and everybody was off on Fridays. And we did that throughout the summer that year. Once everybody was vaccinated, they felt a lot better about coming into the office.
So we're past all that now. Sounds like you guys adapted, but back to business as usual. At that point, so this is 8 years in, what was the size of the firm at the point of this part of the story? Revenue.
The revenue size was around 1.617.
Okay, so you've grown 2 million in 4 years. Tell me about that growth. Did you have any acquisitions?
There was an acquisition like pre-pandemic, but really a lot of things kind of fell out because of the pandemic. There was, a lot of the older practitioners in town that had always been like, oh, I'm going to retire, and never did. During the pandemic, a lot of them did just close their doors and just walk away from all their clients. So there was a lot of small practitioners that just closed up shop
Gave up.
during the pandemic. Yeah, gave up. Yeah.
They were through with it. They were already about to retire anyway. So you didn't have to acquire those firms. People just came to you?
Right. They just referred them out. They were like, hey, we got a bunch of clients. Can you help take care of them? And I was like, yeah, sure. If they're a good fit, we'll bring them in.
So you're always hiring, right?
We're always hiring. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Matter of fact, just hired a senior tax associate for the upcoming. Yeah. She accepted an offer, and we're hiring for 2 more associates between now and the end of the year. And we're still interviewing interns. So, we're constantly hiring. We've been fortunate that we've had like a very low employee turnover ratio as well. So a lot of folks that interned with us years ago, we have 2 or 3 professionals. They interned with us their junior and senior years. Then they did 2 years as an associate with us, and now they're 3-year seniors. The folks that they come in and they tend to stick around and enjoy themselves a little bit. So we've been fortunate.
So tell me about the makeup of the different parts of the practice. You've got your traditional tax services, probably a big part of that. And that includes all the specialty tax stuff. And then you've got your audit side, and then you've got CAS. I guess CAS is like sort of in the middle there. Tell me the breakdown of that, $3.5 million.
So it's about 50-50. So our insurance services is 50%, and then the tax and the CAS is the other 50%. It's kind of a rough breakdown. Assurance services also includes peer reviews and...
Are you doing peer reviews too for other firms?
Oh, yeah. So still involved with peer reviews.
Well, sure. But that's also a part of business now. You're making money on them, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and it's good work too. It's 100% realization. It can just get frustrating sometimes because everything has to go through the RAB, right? The peer review committee, and work gets scrutinized by a tech reviewer. And sometimes there's some back and forth and differences of opinion that need to get worked through. So it's one of those when you go from being an audit partner and having a final say to now you got somebody else reviewing your work, critiquing it. So you're almost like a staff person again. So it's a little bit of an adjustment when you're doing peer reviews. So.
Probably good for the ego. Probably good. Good to keep things in check a little bit too. Humble you sometimes.
Right.
Now, at what point did you take on partners? So you're the managing partner, you're the founder, your name's on it. Do you have other partners?
Right. So Paul and Alicia, who started with me, we used to work together at Grant Thornton, and then they came on board about second and third year that I was in operations. They both have 10% each, and that was just effective Jan 1 of 24 this year.
Okay. So you had about a year of being multi-owner. They have 10 each. Did you give them that percentage? Did they buy into that? How does that equity work?
It was because I had 100% of the outstanding shares. So as an S corp, right? Sold 20% to the firm, and then the firm sold 10% each to them. So.
Okay, so they bought into it, and now your distributions are monitored. If you take any money out, you got to make sure you slip them another little bit too, right?
Right. It all has to be proportionate.
looks like they are pretty much running the different shows, right? You have one that's running the audit and one that's running the tax side.
Right, right. I'll do a lot on the sales, the outreach, marketing side, operations, still doing with all the vendors and contracts and, recruiting and so forth. But, once a client gets in the door and gets onboarded, then, I hand them off to the different teams and let them run with it. And then from there, I only get involved. There's some super technical issues we need to talk through. Maybe we need to do some outside consultations, or just to do client relations. And of course, if there's any sort of complaints or what have you, I'll jump in and help with those as well. Fortunately, those are few and far between. It's more the getting together with clients for golf and dinner and drinks than any sort of complaints. So that's kind of the fun part of the job.
For sure. You've kept all the things that you like, and you've pretty much got the rest of it taken care of by the team you hired. So you took some sacrifices, you made some sacrifices in order to get to that place. But now tell us how you're faring after all of the sacrifices you've made. How is your margins looking, or what are you taking home, and roughly how much time are you spending in the business?
Oh, I still put in full weeks. I'm not like
But you're still
cruising by.
growing
But yeah.
rapidly too. This is impressive growth over the time that you've had the firm.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I used to think as well too, but I talked to some other managing partners and they're like, "Oh yeah, I started my firm and I was 10 million in 5 years." And I was like, but
Can't compare
that's,
yourself to others. Don't.
I know.
Don't do that at Accounting High. We don't do that at Accounting High. You're running your own race.
Right, exactly.
Compared to
Thank
other
you.
firms in Hawaii, I'm sure you're becoming one of the bigger fish.
We're the 12th largest, and that includes the national firms as well. So
There you go. Yeah. And you're homegrown. So back to the question.
yes,
How
sir.
are you faring now?
Oh, we're doing great. We still have anywhere from 15 to 25% growth year over year. This year, kind of, even though we did grow another 10, 12% in revenues, we kind of throttled it back a little bit because I felt like we needed to adjust and tweak some of our systems so that it run a little bit smoother. I always find that if we have a couple years of real strong growth, there's always like maybe that third or fourth year, you got to kind of pull back on the reins a little bit and just let things stabilize, let the processes smooth out. By then it's been stress tested. And so you can kind of, okay, where are those weak links that we need to address, whether systems, processes, apps that don't integrate with each other, so forth and so on. And so this was one of those years we did a lot of work with a software development gentleman, and he helped us integrate a lot of our apps and smooth out some of our systems. And so this was really like, let's solidify some of these processes a little bit better year. And then next year we'll be able to hit the ground running again.
So you're still evading the question.
So I pay myself, of course, we're an S Corp. My salary is $180. And then, of course, because it's an S Corp, I got to pay for my own health insurance. So that gets tacked on top of it. So now it's like $190. Discretionary spending account. I do travel a lot, and it is nice
Sure.
to fly first class.
You can still write all that off, but
So
I'm
I have
sure,
a pretty healthy discretionary. I guess you want that number too.
Sure, yeah. We like hard numbers.
80,000.
Okay.
And then distributions, probably another 40,000 easy there. So, you start adding it up, and then we'll keep a lot of cash in the business and reinvest in technology and so forth. So, if you add all those numbers up, it's not too bad.
Not too bad. It's cash flowing somewhere around 400,000, sounds like. I still want to go back to the Hawaii thing. Was this always like a dream of yours to end up in Hawaii?
When I was in the Marine Corps, I spent a lot of time in Okinawa, Japan. I spent 5 years there, and I kind of fell in love with the island life, the scuba diving, the beaches, and so forth. So when the opportunity presented itself in Hawaii, I didn't hesitate one bit. And kind of jumped on it. So But otherwise, I'd never lived in Hawaii. I was never stationed in Hawaii. I never vacationed in Hawaii. My first time to Hawaii was when I flew over to interview.
Yeah. And now you've got your little own oasis here. 2012 was around the birth of the cloud. So it looks like you've been using Xero for a while too, Bill.com and some of these other apps. At what point did you pull CAS in, or was that straight from the start?
Yeah, no. So I was on the assurance services side at Grant Thornton. And so when I started, we were 100% assurance services. It wasn't till 2018 we acquired a small firm over on the Big Island up in Waimea, and they did tax and CAS. And so that's how we kind of brought those service lines into the fold. And they were, at that time when we acquired that practice, it was, so that those services were only 30% of the entire practice. And then now we've grown them to more of a 50-50 split.
Did you start cross-marketing to the audit clients and servicing them, or just taking on new clients?
For the tax services, we did that, because of independence rules and so forth, couldn't really help out much with the CAS stuff. But yeah, we did cross-selling the tax services to the audit clients. And
so
then
it started with an acquisition, though, to get your foundation for that work. And then you've grown it and built it to now rival the size of the audit practice.
Right. And as we all know, audit margins or margins on audits are relatively low versus tax and CAS. They're a lot healthier, right? So it kind of helps with the profitability of the firm too, to change that mix up a little bit. And also, I think the employees enjoy working in tax and CAS a lot better than grinding away vouching invoices in an audit. So
it's a little more exciting, and it's work that could be more rewarding, at least, because you're actually doing something. I mean, it's still compliance at the end of the day. You're still doing stuff that kind of has to get done, but at least, I think it's a different vibe when you're talking to clients about it. You're adding different services that are going to be useful to them, not just another box that has to be checked or something that has to get done. So adding in, like I said, bill pay and the other CAS services, it sounds like that's another largely fast growing part of your practice too. How are you marketing those services?
Oddly enough, we don't, other than advertising and the local business publication and, social media, there's not a lot of other marketing that we do. We get the majority of our new business is all referrals from existing clients.
Okay. Referrals. Do you have a good trusted brand name, Verity, that sounds very secure and trusted, very high tech, Verity CPA? So, like on the local pages, I'm sure people are finding you through Google too, right? Like you're showing up on Google searches?
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah,
so you're one of the larger firms in the area, so you're probably showing up. Do you have a lot of clients that leave you reviews on there? Do you have a presence on Google?
No, that's something that's on my to-do list for this next year. I mean, we do have our business profile set up in Google and Bing, but, I think we have like maybe 1 or 2 reviews max. I mean, there's not a lot of reviews on there.
So you're really just taking orders. People are coming in, you're taking orders, or your team is, and they're running most of this. I guess you're coming in for the larger sales engagements or the larger meetings, but if somebody finds you guys online, they can book a meeting with your team straight from the page.
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to have my link on there as well because everybody would just always booked with me. And
I get it.
That's all I was doing. Yeah. And somebody would like, well, I just had a question about a 1040. And I'm like, no, we're not that type of firm. So you're right.
So
I
there
took mine
might be a
off.
little bit of hesitation to putting more effort into Google because you don't want to get those types of leads, because you will. The more effort you put into just the inbound leads, you're going to get anybody. So you have to do a better job of filtering those leads too.
Right. And we're in the process of revamping, the website, integrating it with the CRM, updating our practice management systems. So that's all on the agenda for next year to get a lot of that worked out. But
yeah, well, you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? If you're going to modernize things, you got to do it one thing at a time. So what's one thing that you've changed recently at the firm or this year, besides giving their equity, which was a big step too?
Right. last couple of years, we found we had a lot of apps that weren't, of course, integrated with one another. So we brought in Wesley, who has a software development firm specialized in helping out CPA firms, to help us integrate some of those apps. So he built out some bots for us. Sometimes he was able to use Zapier to do it. But yeah, just really bringing him in this year and helping us integrate and automate some of those more manual processes and push data between systems was a huge help. So that was something that we accomplished this year.
Oh, dope. So automating all those basic, simple tasks.
Mm-hmm. Client data, how many systems do you have to have client data in, right? So now we put it in Airtable, we check which boxes, which systems needs that information pushed out to, and it pushes it out.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? One source of truth. It still doesn't integrate with UltraTax. Your Airtable's not going to go into UltraTax, so you're still going to have something in it that has to be updated manually in UltraTax.
Oh, for sure. Right. Yeah. CCH and Thomson Reuters, they always have to have their own thing, right?
For sure. For sure. Do you have everything on a server still at your office?
No, we've been since I founded the firm in 2012. However, that being said, when we acquired that small practice over on the Big Island, they were server based. So we do have like one server, and we are slowly, like we use CCH Access Tax, so that's already in the cloud, but we're slowly getting off that server. And really the server is just because some of the clients, legacy clients over there that we inherited, are still using QuickBooks Desktop. And so we have to have a server to share the QuickBooks Desktop files.
Sure. It's always going to stay the same until there's a forcing mechanism that's going to force or require somebody to change, whether it's a change in ownership or something at each of those little businesses that are still using their old ways. Nobody wants to change. It works. Whatever they're doing works, and they have no incentive at that stage until it's necessary. I want to learn what you learned from your acquisition, since you had one acquisition in your growth phase, and that was a big part of the trajectory of your firm. What have you learned since?
So I think what I learned then, because it was very much, a much smaller practice, a couple 100,000. And he was pretty much, we worked on terms for a little bit. He was pretty agreeable. Really, he just wanted to move to the mainland near his grandchildren, buy an RV, and travel around the West with his wife. But it was pretty much, he was going to stay on through the first busy season. But then it ended up being after like a month or so, like, call me if you need me, I'm out of here, right? And then we ended up with an office in Hilo. There was a firm, a practitioner. We did their peer review. And she was looking to retire. She wanted to go and play tennis and travel with her husband. And she was like, oh, come over and check it out and see what you think. And I went to visit her in Hilo, and she's like, oh, yes, this is it. Here's the client list. I highlighted the ones you probably want to keep, and the other ones you probably want to let go. And I've already talked to them. Here's the keys. Call me if you need me. Those were two very different, right? But then last year we were working on another acquisition. The idea was sold to us as what's on Kauai, which nobody in our firm had any sort of ties to whatsoever. So that should have been the first red flag right there. At least with the Big Island, like Alicia was from the Big Island, she was moving back to the Big Island, so it made sense. But there was nobody with ties, not even like family members.
How far is it to travel to the Big Island? You mentioned the Big Island for our students. What does that look like?
It's about a 30-minute flight.
You can't drive?
Between islands, yeah, no bridges. I mean, I guess.
You have to fly. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could paddle over, I guess, or...
I don't know. I've never been to Hawaii, so... You don't have to fly to Long Island or to the Outer Banks. There's still ways you can drive to these islands that I'm close to.
Oh yeah, no, there's no bridges connecting the islands here. There used to be a super ferry at one time, but that no longer operates.
Oh, a super ferry would have the cars.
Yeah, so now you just fly over, you rent a car and so forth. And you can reach all the islands in relatively like pretty much under an hour. You know, Maui, Big Island,
This is like
Kauai.
taking a bus. Like, do you have to get flight tickets or anything? You just show up at the airport, grab a ticket.
On Southwest, you probably can. You just show up. Well, you know what? They stopped selling, I think, same day tickets, or did they? But yeah, you could just go online and book it easily enough on Southwest on your phone through the app. And matter of fact, I did that. I was heading over to Maui. It was during the wildfires. I was flying over to help some people out, and I booked it at lunch, and I was on a plane at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, and it's a half hour away, so you're at your other office on site, or helping people out. Yeah, so dope. Dustin Verity from Honolulu, Hawaii. Give our students one piece of advice. If you could summarize anything, the things that you've learned over this time, growing your practice.
I would say drink a lot. No, I'm joking.
It's a good
But
piece of
definitely,
advice.
yeah. I mean, I think that'll just come with it. But you got to stay focused. You got to be flexible. You got to be agile. Nothing is pretty much ever going to work as planned. And so you got to be willing to pivot quickly. You got to be able to keep your calm and stay cool. And the first couple of years are always the roughest. But once you start getting momentum, don't sit back on your laurels. Just keep reinvesting funds and fielding or flaming the fire. And then before too long, hopefully a lot faster than me, you'll get to a place where it's a lot more comfortable, and then you don't have those worries anymore. So,
What are the worries that keeps you drinking, that keeps you up at night?
well, it used to be payroll, because it turns out, that comes around twice a month.
It doesn't sound like that's a problem now.
Right. Now, I mean, it's more of a machine. The firm just runs like
Do
a
you
machine
ever
at this point.
overhire and still run into some of those problems if you're always hiring?
No, because I mean, we can usually bring in new work just as fast as we hire.
Okay.
And a lot of times too, I mean, we're always looking, but we like to hire new associates from our intern pool. And so they're vetted a little bit. But, when it comes to the experience hires, we can be a little picky, and we will, just say, no, they're not going to be a good fit, and so forth. So yeah, we're always hiring, but that doesn't mean that, there's constantly new people showing up all the time.
You're still in charge of the hiring process?
Pretty much. I mean, the department heads will do the interviewing, and then Alice, she'll get into salary negotiations. Everybody kind of gives me their thoughts and opinions. And, if it's, I may meet them once or twice, and if it seems like it's going to be a good fit and everybody's in agreement, then we move forward.
For our students, Alice is Alice.
Oh, yeah, she's my wife. So,
Right. Okay.
yep.
That's what I thought. So you work with your wife too. Tell us about that. How is that working out?
Okay. Yeah. So if you want to know lessons learned, I can give you lessons learned on that. Do not share the same office space within the same office, if that makes any sense.
Because you already share a house.
Yeah. All right. So, we get up together in the morning, we go for a jog together, we get ready together, we get in the same car together, we drive to the same office together. Inside that office, we share another office together. We have lunch together, drive home together. Yeah, I would say just make sure to give each other space, because that was rough for the first year or two. But when I go out with clients in the evenings and so forth, she doesn't come along. We'll drive separately. I would also say have separate offices within the office. Don't go to the same meetings all the time together. Have she's in charge of operations and HR, so she'll have her own set of meetings. And
Who's in charge at the house and who's in charge at the firm?
that may be her for both.
Fair. Good answer.
Let's say at home, she's probably more in charge, and in the office, I'm probably more in charge, because I'll have the final say. But, she has her input as well. And if I go another direction than what her input is, then I need to be prepared for those consequences.
There you go. All right. Well, you should also be open to that too.
Oh, of
And,
course, of
yeah.
course.
And see all avenues. That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming and visiting our school here at Accounting High. Last question here. Is your plan do you have a big goal to get to 10 million, or is this now just kind of growth for the sake of growth?
And no, I want to get to 5 million actually.
Okay.
Within the next 2 years. I think that's well, I mean, it's a stretch, but I think it's doable.
It's your next short-term goal, next reach goal.
Right. And then after 5 million, we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. You
Yeah,
either sell, merge, or acquire more, get to 10 million, do something. You got to figure that out. We'll have you on again once you hit that 5 million. We'll see what's next.
Cool. Sounds good.
Dope. All right, homie. Peace out. Class dismissed.